Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, watching the blue and green planet grow larger on the main screen. After 6 months of travel through deep space, his crew was finally approaching their destination. The planet had no official name yet, just a number in the star charts, Kepler 442b. But to Jake and his team, it looked like it could be humanity's next home. "Captain, we're getting some strange readings from the surface," said Lisa Carter from her station. She was the ship's communications officer, a young woman from Ohio who had joined the crew fresh out of the academy. Her fingers danced across the control panel as she tried to make sense of the data. Jake walked over to look at her screen. The planet was supposed to be empty of intelligent life according to the long-range scans from Earth, but now they were picking up massive energy signatures from the surface, cities, power grids, and what looked like a thriving civilization. You sure about this, Lisa?" Jake asked. He had been in space for 15 years, but finding unexpected alien life still made his heart race. "Yes, sir. The signals are definitely artificial. Someone down there is using advanced technology." Lisa adjusted her headset and continued scanning the frequencies. "Wait, I'm getting something else. It sounds like a transmission." The bridge went quiet. Everyone stopped what they were doing and listened as Lisa worked to clear up the signal. Static filled the air, then slowly, words began to emerge. Broken, accented English came through the speakers. "No light allowed at night. Survive if you follow. Death if you don't," the message repeated 3 times before cutting off. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He looked around at his crew. Dr. Amanda Brooks, the team's xenobiologist, was already pulling up her research files. Tony Martinez, their engineer, was checking the ship's power systems. Kevin Wright, the security chief, had his hand on his weapon. "Captain," Amanda said, "we need to be very careful here. That message suggests these aliens have some kind of problem with artificial light." Jake nodded. "Lisa, try to send a response. Tell them we're peaceful explorers from Earth. Ask if we can talk." Lisa worked for several minutes before getting a reply. The same voice came through, clearer this time. "You're welcome to land, but remember, no light allowed at night. Your lives depend on this." The landing party consisted of Jake, Amanda, Tony, and Kevin. They took a small shuttle down to the planet's surface, landing near what looked like a major city. As they stepped out, Jake was amazed by what he saw. The city was beautiful but strange. Buildings stretched high into the sky, but they were made of what looked like crystal and metal. Everything seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. The streets were wide and clean, with flowing water channels running alongside them. But the strangest thing was the people. They weren't human at all. The aliens were tall, maybe 7 feet on average, with bodies that seemed to be made of living crystal. Their skin reflected light in rainbow patterns, and their eyes glowed with a soft inner light. They moved gracefully, almost like they were floating. A group of the aliens approached the landing party. The one in front was older than the others, with more complex crystal patterns on his skin. He wore simple robes and carried what looked like a translation device. "Welcome, travelers from the stars," the alien said through the device. His voice was deep and musical. "I am Elder Zethka. We have been watching your ship in the sky. We hoped you would come." Jake stepped forward. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison. This is my crew. We come in peace from a planet called Earth." Elder Zethka nodded. "Peace is what we need. But first, you must understand our most important rule. When the sun sets, you must turn off all your artificial lights. All of them. No exceptions." "Why?" Amanda asked. "What happens if we don't?" The Elder's crystal body seemed to dim. "We die, very quickly and very painfully. Artificial light at night causes our bodies to freeze solid. We cannot survive it." Tony looked confused. "But what about natural light? Stars? Moonlight?" "Natural light is safe," Elder Zethka explained. "Only artificial light harms us. Light from electrical devices, from fire, from any source made by intelligent beings. It creates vibrations in our bodies that we cannot survive." Jake tried to understand. "So your entire civilization shuts down at night?" Yes, when darkness comes, we enter a state like what you might call sleep. We cannot move, we cannot think clearly, we cannot work. We survive only until dawn comes again. Amanda was taking notes on a tablet. How long has your species lived this way? Always, the elder said sadly. It is the curse of our people. We have never been able to work at night to study the stars, to build the great machines that might take us beyond our world. We are prisoners of the daylight. As the sun began to set, Jake could see the change in the alien city. Lights that had been glowing softly began to dim. The aliens themselves seemed to move more slowly, as if they were getting tired. You must return to your ship or turn off your lights, Elder Zethka warned. Night is coming. Jake's crew hurried back to their shuttle. As they lifted off, Jake looked down at the city below. It was completely dark now, as if millions of people had simply vanished. He had never seen anything like it. Back on the horizon, the crew gathered in the main conference room. Jake had called for a full briefing about what they had learned. So, let me get this straight, Jake said. These aliens, the Valkyrie, have built an entire civilization, but they can't use any artificial light after dark because it kills them. That's correct, Amanda confirmed. From what I could observe, their bodies are made of a crystalline structure that's extremely sensitive to certain types of light. Natural light sources don't affect them, but anything artificial creates some kind of resonance that disrupts their cellular structure. Tony was studying the readings from their visit. Their technology is actually quite advanced in some ways. Those translation devices, their building materials, their water systems, but everything is designed to work during daylight hours only. What? About their weapons? Kevin asked. Are they a threat to us? I don't think so, Jake replied. They seem more afraid of us than we are of them. Did you see how carefully they watched our equipment? They're terrified we might accidentally use artificial light at night. Lisa had been quiet during the briefing, but now she spoke up. Captain, I've been monitoring their communications. They're talking about something called the Great Darkness that's coming. It sounds like they're facing some kind of crisis. Jake leaned forward. What kind of crisis? I'm not sure. The translation isn't perfect, but they keep mentioning shorter days, longer nights, and something about their star growing dimmer. Amanda looked worried. If their star is going through natural changes and they can only be active during daylight, they could be facing extinction. The room fell silent. Jake looked around at his crew. They had come here looking for a new home for humanity, but instead they had found an alien race that might be dying. We need to learn more, Jake decided. Tomorrow we'll go back down and ask more questions. Maybe there's something we can do to help. Help them how? Kevin asked. I don't know yet. But they're intelligent beings facing a crisis. If we can help them survive, maybe we can learn something that will help humanity too. As the crew prepared for sleep, Jake stood alone on the bridge, looking down at the dark planet below. Somewhere in that darkness, millions of alien beings were trapped in a state between life and death, waiting for the sun to rise again. He wondered what it would be like to live that way, never able to see the stars at night, never able to work, or play or love after sunset. He made a decision. Tomorrow he would do everything in his power to help the Valkyrie find a way to survive their curse. It was the right thing to do, and maybe, just maybe, it would lead to something that could help both their species thrive among the stars. The next morning, Jake's team returned to the Valkyrie city with more equipment and questions. Dr. Amanda Brooks had spent the night reviewing everything they knew about crystal-based life forms, while Tony Martinez had prepared a collection of different light sources to test the aliens' reactions. Elder Zethka met them at the same spot as before, but this time he brought several other Valkyrie with him. There was Kolveth, a skilled craftsman whose crystal body showed intricate patterns of blue and silver. Next to him stood Nelque, a young scientist who was eager to learn about human technology. We are grateful you returned, Elder Zethka said through his translation device. Many of our people were afraid you would leave after learning about our weakness. Jake shook his head. We're not going anywhere. We want to understand your situation better. Maybe we can help. Amanda stepped forward with her medical scanner. Elder Zethka, would you allow me to study your physiology? I promise it won't hurt, and it might help us understand how artificial light affects your people. The elder agreed, and Amanda began her scans. The results were fascinating. The Valkyries' bodies were made of a living crystal matrix that absorbed and redirected light in complex patterns. Their cells were arranged in geometric structures that created natural prisms throughout their bodies. This is incredible, Amanda told Jake quietly. Their entire biology is based on light manipulation. They literally live by absorbing and processing natural light energy. Tony was conducting his own tests nearby. He had brought different types of lights, flashlights, LED panels, even simple candles. Nelquay volunteered to help with the experiments, though he kept a safe distance. Watch this, Tony said, turning on a small flashlight. Even from 20 feet away, Nelquay immediately began to shiver. His crystal body started to lose its glow, and frost began forming on his skin. Tony quickly turned off the light. Sorry, I didn't think it would affect you from so far away. Nelquay took several minutes to recover. The distance does not matter much, he explained. All artificial light creates the same effect. The stronger the light, the faster we freeze. Amanda looked up from her scanner. I think I understand what's happening. Your bodies are designed to resonate with natural light frequencies. But artificial light sources create different wavelengths that disrupt your cellular structure. Like a musical instrument that breaks when you play the wrong note? Elder Zethka asked. Exactly, Amanda confirmed. Your bodies are tuned to work with sunlight, moonlight, and starlight. Everything else is harmful. As the day progressed, the humans learned more about Valkyrie society. The aliens had developed an entire civilization around their light sensitivity. They had no electric power, no combustion engines, no fire-based technology. Everything was powered by mechanical systems that worked during daylight hours. Their buildings were designed to capture and store sunlight in crystal matrices. During the day, these crystals would glow softly, providing illumination for their work. But as night fell, the crystals would dim, and the entire city would go dark. We have learned to do much with little, Kolveth explained as he showed them through his workshop. We shape metal without fire, we build without electric tools, we create art from light itself. Jake was impressed by their ingenuity, but he could see the limitations. How do you handle emergencies at night? What if someone gets hurt or sick? We cannot, Elder Zethka said sadly. Night is a time of vulnerability for us. We enter a state similar to your sleep, but we cannot wake easily. Many of our people have died from injuries that occurred after sunset. Lisa, who had been monitoring Valkyrie Communications, reported something troubling. Captain, I'm picking up broadcasts from other cities. They're all talking about the same thing. Their days are getting shorter. Nelquay confirmed this. It is true. Our star grows dimmer each year. The period of safe daylight becomes less and less. Our scientists calculate that within one generation, there will not be enough daylight for our people to survive. Amanda looked alarmed. Are you talking about your star dying? Not dying, Elder Zethka corrected, but changing. Stars do this naturally over time. Our sun is entering a new phase of its life. It will provide less light for many thousands of years. Jake felt a knot form in his stomach. So your entire species is facing extinction? Yes, unless we can find a way to be active during longer periods of darkness, we will die out. This is why we were so happy to see your ship. We hoped beings who could use artificial light might have an answer. The conversation was interrupted by alarms echoing across the city. Valkyrie citizens began moving quickly through the streets, their crystal bodies flashing with urgent patterns of light. What's happening? Kevin asked, his hand moving to his weapon. Elder Zethka's translation device crackled with static before his voice came through. The Skywatchers have detected objects approaching our world, large objects. Jake contacted the horizon immediately. Lisa, get me a full scan of the local space. What's heading toward this planet? The response came quickly. Captain, long-range sensors are detecting an asteroid swarm on collision course with the planet. Impact in approximately 30 days? Jake's heart sank. How bad? Multiple impacts. Across several continents. The debris clouds will block significant sunlight for months, possibly years. Jake looked at the Valkyrie around him. Their faces showed expressions he was beginning to recognize as fear and despair. They were facing a double catastrophe. Their star was already dimming, and now asteroids would block even more light. "We are doomed," Elder Zethka said quietly. "The great darkness comes sooner than we thought." But Jake wasn't ready to give up. Not necessarily. We need to think about this problem differently. Over the next few hours, Jake's team worked with the Valkyrie to understand the full scope of the crisis. The asteroid impacts would create dust clouds that would reduce surface light by at least 70%. Combined with the naturally dimming star, the Valkyrie would have only a few hours of usable daylight each day. It's not enough, Nelquay calculated. We need at least 8 hours of light to maintain our basic functions. With the impacts, we will have perhaps 3 hours. Amanda was studying her data on Valkyrie biology. What if we could find a way to extend your active period without using artificial light? How? Elder Zethka asked. I'm not sure yet, but there might be a way to work with natural light sources. Moonlight, starlight, even reflected sunlight. Tony, who had been quiet for most of the discussion, suddenly looked up. Wait, what about reflected light? What do you mean? Jake asked. Well, moonlight is just reflected sunlight, right? And you said moonlight doesn't hurt them? What if we could find a way to reflect and concentrate natural light? Nelquay's crystal body began to glow brighter. You mean like our crystal matrices, but larger? Much larger, Tony said, excitement building in his voice. What if we could build mirrors? Huge mirrors that could capture moonlight and starlight, and concentrate it enough to keep your city lit? Elder Zethka looked doubtful. Such a thing has never been attempted. The mirrors would need to be enormous. But it might work, Amanda said. If we could create enough reflected natural light, it might give you the extended active period you need to survive. Jake felt hope returning. How much time do we have? 30 days until the first impacts, Lisa reported. But the asteroid swarm will continue for months. Then we need to work fast, Jake decided. Tony, can you design a mirror system that would work? Tony was already sketching ideas on his tablet. I think so. But it would require cooperation from your entire civilization. We'd need thousands of mirrors, precisely positioned and constantly adjusted. Kolveth stepped forward. Our people are skilled in working with reflective crystals. If you can show us how to build such mirrors, we will make them. It won't be easy, Jake warned. We'll need to work day and night to get it done in time. Elder Zethka looked at his fellow Valkyrie, then back at Jake. Captain Morrison, you offer us hope when we had none. If there is even a small chance this could work, we must try. Jake nodded firmly. Then we're going to save your people. All of them. As the sun began to set, Jake looked out over the Valkyrie city. In 30 days, asteroids would begin raining down on this world. The Valkyrie had already been facing slow extinction from their dimming star. Now they had an even more immediate threat, but they also had something they'd never had before: human ingenuity and the will to fight against impossible odds. Jake didn't know if Tony's mirror idea would work, but he was determined to try. An entire civilization depended on it. Tony Martinez had always been the kind of person who solved problems with his hands. Growing up in Texas, he had fixed everything from broken tractors to damaged oil rigs. But the problem facing the Valkyrie was unlike anything he had ever encountered. He spent the entire night aboard the Horizon, sketching designs and running calculations. The idea seemed simple enough in theory: use mirrors to capture and redirect moonlight to illuminate the Valkyrie city. But the practical challenges were enormous. The next morning, Tony returned to the planet with a head full of ideas and a tablet full of rough drawings. He found Kolveth waiting for him in the craftsman's workshop. The Valkyrie artisan had also been working through the night. though in his case it meant entering the strange hibernation state that his people experienced after dark. "I have been thinking about your mirror idea," Kolveth said through his translation device. "Show me what you have in mind." Tony pulled up his first design on the tablet. It showed a series of large mirrors arranged in a circle around the city. The basic concept is to capture moonlight from multiple angles and redirect it downward into the streets. Kolveth studied the design carefully. His crystal body flickered with patterns of light as he thought. The mirrors would need to move as the moon travels across the sky. How would we control them? "Mechanical systems," Tony explained. "No electricity, no artificial power sources. Everything would be operated by hand cranks and gear systems." "Like clockwork," Kolveth mused. "We have experience with such mechanisms, but the scale, it would be massive." Tony nodded. "That's the biggest challenge. We'd need mirrors covering several square miles, all working together." Over the next few days, Tony worked closely with Kolveth and other Valkyrie craftsmen to refine the design. They discovered that the aliens had developed sophisticated techniques for creating reflective surfaces using their natural crystals. These crystal mirrors were actually superior to human-made mirrors in many ways. They were lighter, more durable, and could be shaped into complex curves. "Your people are incredible engineers," Tony told Elder Zefka during one of their planning sessions. "You've created solutions I never would have thought of." "We have had many generations to perfect our crafts," the Elder replied. "But we have never attempted anything this ambitious." The mirror system that emerged from their collaboration was elegant in its complexity. Primary mirrors, each the size of a small building, would be positioned on tall towers around the city. These would capture moonlight and direct it to secondary mirrors mounted on the buildings themselves. The secondary mirrors would then spread the light throughout the streets and public spaces. The key innovation was the tracking system. Kolveth had designed a series of mechanical calculators that could predict the moon's position at any time of night. Operators would use these calculations to adjust the mirrors manually, keeping them focused on the lunar disk as it moved across the sky. But even with the Valkyrie's expertise, the project seemed impossible to complete in the time they had. The young scientist had calculated that they would need over 500 primary mirrors and thousands of secondary ones. The amount of materials and labor required was staggering. "We have 23 days until the first asteroid impacts," Jake announced during a meeting in the Valkyrie Council chamber. "Is there any way we can build enough mirrors in that time?" Elder Zefka looked around at the other Valkyrie leaders. "Every able-bodied person in our city will work on this project. We will organize shifts so that work continues from sunrise to sunset." "What about other cities?" Amanda asked. "Are they facing the same crisis?" "All Valkyrie cities will suffer when the asteroids block the sun," Elder Zefka confirmed. "But if we can prove the mirror system works here, we can share the knowledge with them." Tony felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He wasn't just trying to save one city, he was potentially saving an entire species. The pressure was enormous, but it also drove him to push harder than he ever had before. The construction began immediately. Tony was amazed by how quickly the Valkyrie could mobilize their entire society. Within hours, thousands of aliens were working on different aspects of the project. Some were crafting mirror surfaces, others were building the mechanical tracking systems, and still others were constructing the towers that would hold the primary mirrors. Kevin Wright, the security chief, took on the job of coordinating the massive workforce. His military training proved invaluable in organizing the complex logistics of the project. "It's like preparing for a battle," he told Jake. "Except instead of fighting an enemy, we're fighting time itself." Lisa Carter established a communication network between the different work sites. She had learned enough of the Valkyrie language to help coordinate between human and alien workers. The translation devices helped, but there were still constant misunderstandings that slowed progress. Dr. Amanda Brooks focused on solving technical problems that arose during construction. She discovered that the Valkyrie's crystal biology gave them an intuitive understanding of light behavior that was incredibly useful. They could predict how light would reflect and refract in ways that would take human computers hours to calculate. It's like they can see light patterns in their minds, Amanda explained to Jake. Their entire sensory system is built around understanding photons and wavelengths. As the days passed, the mirror system began to take shape. The primary mirrors were massive structures that dominated the skyline around the city. Each one was a masterpiece of engineering, capable of rotating in multiple directions while maintaining perfect focus on the moon. But Tony encountered a problem he hadn't anticipated. The mirrors needed to be incredibly precise to work properly. Even a small error in alignment could cause the reflected light to miss its target entirely. The Valkyrie were skilled craftsmen, but they had never worked with such demanding tolerances. "We're losing too much light to miss alignment," Tony told Kolveth after testing one of the completed mirror arrays. "The system will work, but it won't be bright enough to sustain your people through the long nights after the asteroid impacts." Kolveth's crystal body dimmed with concern. "What can we do?" Tony studied the problem for hours before finding a solution. Instead of trying to make each mirror perfect, he would design the system to compensate for small errors. Additional mirrors would be positioned to catch stray light and redirect it back into the main beam. It was more complex, but it was also more forgiving of minor mistakes. "Redundancy," he explained to the Valkyrie engineers. "If one mirror is slightly off, others will pick up the slack." The new design required even more mirrors, but the Valkyrie craftsmen rose to the challenge. They worked with desperate efficiency, knowing that their species' survival depended on their success. With 15 days remaining, Tony realized they had another problem. The mirror system would work for the main city, but it would only provide light for the areas directly under the mirrors. The Valkyrie needed to be able to move around at night to maintain their civilization during the dark months ahead. "We need portable mirrors," he told Jake. "Smaller systems that individuals can carry or operate." Jake looked exhausted. They all did. The past 2 weeks had been a constant race against time. "Can we build those too?" "We have to," Tony said. "Simply, otherwise we'll save the city but lose the people." The portable mirror project became a second massive undertaking. These smaller devices would allow individual Valkyrie to redirect moonlight for personal use, lighting their homes, their workshops, even their streets. Each portable mirror was a miniature version of the larger system, with its own tracking mechanism and focusing apparatus. Nelquay proved invaluable in this effort. His scientific mind helped Tony understand how to make the portable mirrors both effective and simple enough for ordinary Valkyrie to operate. "They must be foolproof," Nelquay insisted. "In the dark months, people will be operating these while tired and stressed." As the asteroid impact deadline approached, Tony found himself working alongside thousands of Valkyrie in a desperate race against time. The primary mirror system was nearly complete, but the portable mirrors were still being rushed through production. 10 days, Lisa reported during their morning briefing. "The first impacts will begin in 10 days. Tony looked out at the city, now transformed by the forest of mirrors surrounding it. Massive structures gleamed in the sunlight, ready to capture and redirect the moon's glow. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, a last desperate attempt to cheat extinction. "We're going to make it," he said, more to convince himself than anyone else. "We have to." The first asteroid hit the planet 3 days earlier than expected. Tony Martinez was standing on top of one of the mirror towers when the sky lit up with a brilliant streak of fire. The space rock was smaller than the main swarm still approaching, but its impact sent shockwaves across the continent. Within hours, dust began rising into the atmosphere. "That was just the beginning," Lisa Carter reported from the communication center. "The main swarm will start hitting tomorrow." Elder Zethka stood beside Tony on the tower platform, watching the distant glow on the horizon where the asteroid had struck. "We are out of time," he said quietly. Tony nodded grimly. The mirror system was almost complete, but not quite. They had finished all the primary mirrors and most of the secondary ones. The portable mirrors were ready too, but they hadn't had Time to test everything together as one complete system. We'll have to test it tonight under real conditions, Tony decided. With or without more time to prepare. As the sun began to set, the Valkyrie city transformed. Instead of going dark as it had for thousands of years, teams of alien workers took their positions at mirror stations throughout the city, each primary. Mirror had a crew of 3 Valkyrie, operators who would track the moon and adjust the mirror's angle throughout the night. Jake Morrison stood in the main control center they had set up in the city's central plaza. It wasn't really a control center in the human sense. There were no computers or electronic displays. Instead, it was a collection of mechanical calculating devices and communication systems that allowed coordination between all the mirror teams. Everyone ready? Jake called out. The Valkyrie operators at their stations signaled their readiness with patterns of light. Flashed from their crystal bodies. Amanda Brooks was positioned with Nelquay near the largest mirror array. They had instruments to measure the light levels and verify that the system was working properly. We're ready for the test, Amanda reported. As darkness fell, the moon rose over the eastern horizon. It was only a half moon, which would make the test even more challenging. Tony watched from his tower as the first mirror team began tracking the lunar disk. The primary mirror slowly rotated, catching the moonlight and reflecting it down to a secondary mirror mounted on a nearby building. From there, the light bounced to another mirror, then another, spreading the moon's glow throughout the streets below. It's working! Kevin Wright shouted from his position near the market square. The reflected moonlight was clearly visible, casting silver shadows on the buildings and streets, but Tony could see there were problems. Some of the light beams were missing their targets. Other mirrors weren't tracking the moon correctly. The system was functioning, but not efficiently enough. Adjustment teams, start fixing the alignment errors, Tony called out. Groups of Valkyrie. Technicians moved quickly to the mirrors that weren't working properly. Kolveth was leading one of these repair teams. His experience as a craftsman made him excellent at spotting mechanical problems and fixing them quickly. The tracking gear on Mirror 7 is slipping, he reported. We need to tighten the drive mechanism. As the night progressed, the mirror system gradually improved. The Valkyrie operators learned how to work together, adjusting their mirrors to compensate for each other's small errors. The network of reflected light grew brighter and more stable, but the real test came when the first Valkyrie citizens ventured out into the mirror-lit streets. Elder Zefka was the first to leave the safety of his shelter. For his entire life, darkness had meant hibernation and vulnerability. Now, for the first time, he walked through his city under artificial illumination that didn't harm his people. It feels strange, he told Tony through his translation device. Like being in a dream where the rules have changed. More Valkyrie began emerging from their homes. Children who had never seen their parents active after sunset played in the silver-lit streets. Adults marveled at being able to work and move during hours that had always been forbidden to them. Look at them, Amanda said to Jake. They're experiencing something completely new for their species. Jake smiled as he watched young Valkyrie running through the reflected moonbeams. It's like watching a civilization discover fire for the first time. But the celebration was interrupted by another bright streak across the sky. A second asteroid was incoming, much larger than the first. Impact in 6 minutes, Lisa announced. 30 kilometers to the south. This time, everyone could feel the impact when it hit. The ground shook, and the dust cloud that rose was clearly visible even in the moonlight. Within an hour, the amount of natural light reaching the surface had decreased noticeably. The mirrors are compensating, Nelquay reported. The reduced light from the moon is being concentrated effectively. Over the next 3 days, asteroids fell like rain. Some were small and caused only minor dust clouds. Others were massive and sent enormous plumes of debris into the atmosphere. Each impact made the sky darker and the moon dimmer. Tony worked constantly to adjust the mirror system for the changing conditions. As the available moonlight decreased, they had to concentrate it more efficiently. This meant realigning hundreds of mirrors and training the operators to track the moon more precisely. We're losing about 10% of our light each day, Amanda calculated. At this rate, we'll be operating on minimal illumination within a week. Then we need to get more mirrors online, Tony decided. The portable units are ready. We need to distribute them throughout the city. The portable mirrors proved to be a brilliant addition to the main system. Individual Valkyrie families could set up their own small mirror arrays to light their homes and workplaces. Craftsmen like Kolveth used them to continue working in their shops during the dark hours. These smaller mirrors are perfect, Kolveth told Tony. We can move them as needed and adjust them for specific tasks. But even with all the mirrors working together, the system was being pushed to its limits. The asteroid impacts continued for over a week, and the dust clouds were blocking more and more natural light. We're down to about 30% of normal moonlight, Nelquay reported during a late-night planning session. The system is still working, but barely. Tony had been expecting this. He had prepared one final modification to the mirror network, a series of light-gathering arrays that could capture and concentrate even the faintest traces of natural illumination. These are the most sensitive mirrors we've built, he explained to the Valkyrie technicians. They can detect moonlight so faint that human eyes can't see it, then amplify it enough to be useful. The installation of the light-gathering arrays was completed just as the dust clouds reached their thickest point. The sky was so dark that even during the day it looked like late evening. At night, the moon was barely visible through the atmospheric debris. Testing the enhanced system, Tony announced as the new mirrors came online. The result was almost magical. The ultra-sensitive mirrors found traces of moonlight that no one had realized were there. They gathered this faint illumination and concentrated it into beams bright enough to light the city streets. Incredible. Elder Zethka marveled as he walked through the city under light so dim it was almost invisible to human eyes, but perfectly adequate for Valkyrie vision. You have given us the ability to see in near total darkness. The enhanced mirror system worked so well that Valkyrie from other cities began arriving to learn how to build their own versions. Tony found himself training teams of alien engineers who would return to their homes and construct similar networks. Word is spreading across the planet, Lisa reported. Dozens of cities are requesting technical assistance. Jake realized they had started something much bigger than saving one city. We're helping an entire civilization adapt to survive. As the dust clouds slowly began to settle after 2 weeks of constant impacts, the Valkyrie had not only survived, but thrived. Their mirror networks had given them something they'd never had before, the ability to be active and productive during extended dark periods. We have learned much, Elder Zethka told Jake as they stood together watching Valkyrie workers setting up new mirrors by reflected moonlight. Not just about building mirrors, but about working together toward a common goal. Tony looked out over the transformed city. The mirror arrays stretched as far as he could see, a vast network of gleaming surfaces that captured every photon of available natural light. It was beautiful and functional at the same time. Tomorrow we start building the next phase, he told Kolveth. Bigger mirrors, better tracking systems, and networks that can connect multiple cities. The Valkyrie craftsman's crystal body glowed with excitement. Our people will never fear the darkness again. 3 months after the last asteroid impact, the sky above the Valkyrie city was finally beginning to clear. The dust clouds were slowly settling, and each night brought slightly more moonlight than the one before. But the Valkyrie no longer needed to worry about having enough natural light to survive. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the UES Horizon, looking down at the planet below. What he saw amazed him. The surface was covered with thousands of tiny points of light, mirror arrays reflecting moonlight across dozens of Valkyrie cities. The entire planet sparkled like a jewel in the darkness of space. Final report, Captain? Lisa Carter said as she handed him a tablet. We've helped establish mirror networks in 47 cities across 3 continents. The Valkyrie estimate that over 80% of their population now has access to extended nighttime illumination. Jake read through the report with satisfaction. The project had grown far beyond what any of them had imagined. What started as a desperate attempt to save one city had become a planet-wide transformation of an entire civilization. Down on the surface, Tony Martinez was putting the finishing touches on the largest mirror array ever built. This new system was designed to serve the capital city, home to over 2 million Valkyrie. The primary mirrors were massive structures that could be seen from orbit, and the network of secondary mirrors stretched for hundreds of miles. "The tracking system is working perfectly," Kolveth reported as he adjusted one of the mechanical calculators that controlled the mirror alignment. Over the past months, the Valkyrie craftsman had become an expert engineer, capable of designing and building mirror systems that rivaled anything Tony could create. "Your people have learned fast," Tony said with admiration. "These new designs are actually better than my original plans." Kolveth's crystal body flickered with what Tony had learned was the Valkyrie equivalent of a smile. "We have had good teachers, but more importantly, we have had hope." The success of the mirror systems had changed Valkyrie society in ways no one had expected. For the first time in their species' history, they could work and study during the dark hours. This had led to rapid advances in their technology and culture. Dr. Amanda Brooks was documenting these changes in her research facility. "It's remarkable," she told Nelquay as they reviewed data from across the planet. "Your people have made more scientific progress in the past 3 months than in the previous century." Nelquay nodded enthusiastically. "When you can only work during daylight, you have limited time for experimentation and learning. Now we can study the stars, observe the night sky, and conduct research that was impossible before." The young Valkyrie scientist had become one of the leaders in his people's technological revolution. He was working on new types of crystal computers that could process information using reflected light patterns. These devices had no electrical components, making them safe for Valkyrie to use at any time. "We are developing new forms of art as well," Nelquay continued. "Light sculpture, mirror music, crystal painting that changes patterns throughout the night. Our culture is expanding in directions we never imagined." But perhaps the most significant change was in the Valkyrie's relationship with their children. Before the mirrors, young Valkyrie had been forced into hibernation every night from birth. They grew up never knowing their parents during the dark hours, never experiencing family life after sunset. Elder Zethka spoke about this during a ceremony to honor the human visitors. "Our children are learning what it means to have a complete day," he said to the assembled crowd. "They play games in the reflected moonlight, they hear bedtime stories from their parents. They experience the full rhythm of life that was denied to us for so many generations." Jake watched as young Valkyrie children ran through the mirror-lit streets, their crystal bodies glowing with joy. Some of them had been born after the mirror systems were built, and for them, nighttime activity was simply normal life. They would grow up in a world where darkness was no longer a prison. Kevin Wright had taken on the task of training Valkyrie security teams to operate during extended hours. "It's been interesting," he told Jake. "They're learning that being active at night brings new challenges, but also new opportunities. They can now respond to emergencies after dark, organize rescue operations, and maintain their cities around the clock." The portable mirror systems had proven especially valuable for Valkyrie who lived in rural areas or worked outside the main cities. Farmers could tend their crops during cool nighttime hours. Travelers could journey safely after sunset. Researchers could explore remote areas that had previously been inaccessible during their people's hibernation periods. "We have requests for mirror systems from every inhabited continent," Lisa reported during one of their final planning meetings. "The Valkyrie want to connect their cities with networks of traveling mirrors, creating light pathways across their entire world." Tony looked at the plans with wonder. "They're thinking bigger than we ever did, a planet-wide network of reflected light." As the time came for the human crew to depart, the Valkyrie organized a massive celebration. Representatives from cities across the planet gathered in the capital to honor the visitors who had saved their civilization. The ceremony took place at midnight, under the light of the Great Mirror Array. Thousands of Valkyrie filled the central plaza, their crystal bodies creating a spectacular Display of natural bioluminescence enhanced by the reflected moonlight. Elder Zethka stepped forward to address the crowd. Before these humans arrived, we lived as prisoners of the daylight. We could not work at night, could not love at night, could not dream at night. We were half a people living half a life. The crowd of Valkyrie pulsed with patterns of agreement, their bodies flashing in unison. But they did not just give us mirrors, the elder continued. They gave us hope. They showed us that problems which seem impossible can be solved when different peoples work together. Jake felt emotional as he listened to the translation. We didn't do this alone, he said when it was his turn to speak. Your people built these systems. Your craftsmen created the mirrors. Your engineers designed the tracking mechanisms. We just shared an idea. Tony stepped forward next. What we've learned here will help humanity too, he said. We've discovered new ways to work with light and reflection that we never would have developed on our own. This partnership has made both our species stronger. As the ceremony concluded, Kolveth presented Tony with a special gift, a small crystal sculpture that captured and reflected light in impossible patterns. The sculpture seemed to glow from within, creating shifting patterns of color and brightness that hypnotized anyone who looked at it. This is made from the same crystals we use in our mirrors, Kolveth explained. But it is shaped to create beauty, not just function. It will remind you that light can be both practical and magical. Amanda received a collection of Valkyrie research, data that would advance human understanding of crystal-based technologies. Nelquay had compiled everything his people had learned about light manipulation and reflection physics. Your people have made discoveries that our scientists will be studying for decades, Amanda told him gratefully. As the UES Horizon prepared to leave orbit, Jake took one last look at the planet below. The surface was even brighter now than when they had arrived. New mirror arrays were being built every day, and the networks of reflected light were spreading across continents. They're going to be fine, Lisa observed as she watched the sparkling surface. Better than fine, actually. They're going to thrive, Jake nodded. And they'll remember that humans helped them when they needed it most. That's the kind of reputation I want humanity to have among the stars. Tony was already sketching ideas for his next project. I keep thinking about other applications for these mirror systems. What if we could build them on airless moons? Or use them to illuminate mining operations on dark planets? One world at a time, Jake laughed. But you're right. We've learned something here that could help humans and aliens throughout the galaxy. As the Horizon jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Valkyrie system behind, Jake felt proud of what they had accomplished. They had come looking for a new home for humanity, but instead they had helped save an entire alien civilization. The Valkyrie would never again fear the darkness. They had learned to capture starlight and moonlight, to bend and focus natural illumination, to serve their needs. Most importantly, they had learned that cooperation between different species could achieve the impossible, and somewhere in the reflected light that now bathed their world every night, their children played and learned and dreamed of a future brighter than any their ancestors could have imagined.